It is episode number 2 of the Shuckin Around podcast. Thrilled to have you here. My name is Garrett Green. I'm the media relations manager and broadcaster for the Biloxi Shuckers. Coming up on today's episode, we have a really good one for you. A couple of interviews on the second edition of the Shuckin Around podcast. We chat with David Frye, infielder, catcher, and sometimes outfielder for the Biloxi Shuckers for most of the 2021 season. Got a late push up to AAA. So we talked with David about his experience moving up to AAA, what the season was like for him with the Biloxi Shuckers. We also revisit his first trip up to Biloxi, and that was in 2019 when he came up and was part of the then Southern League Championship Series with Biloxi. We also talk about his high school recruiting, how he ended up at Northwestern State. Great stories from David, so we're excited to bring you that. Then after that, we talk with Greg Young, who's the broadcaster for the Carolina Mudcats, and talk about all of the offensive all-stars in the Brewers farm system. Of course, MLB named their organizational all-stars, and a lot of those guys went through Carolina this season. So we talk with Greg about Joey Weimer, Joe Gray Jr., Xavier Warren, all those guys. We also touch a little bit about the Alex Binelas trade along with David Hamilton. So a couple of guys who were in the minor leagues this year, they got traded away. Greg brings all kinds of great insight. And so we're thrilled to have that interview as well. If you like this podcast, be sure to like us both on the Apple Podcast Center. You can also find us on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube if you want to watch the entire interview. So we're available for you there on the Biloxi Shuckers official YouTube page. So be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, and we'll certainly be doing a lot more of these podcasts as we move into January. After the holiday break, we're going to bring a lot more content for you as we'll be on a little bit more of a regular schedule. But coming up first, David Frye is our guest for today. Well, joining us today on the Shuckin Around podcast, episode number 2, he was a third baseman, second baseman, catcher, and left fielder for the Biloxi Shuckers over the course of 75 games in 2021. David Frye is here with us. David, how's it going today?
Going good. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, thanks for hopping on. Hey, so you just got back from your honeymoon, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Very nice. Well, congratulations. Did you guys get married and then go straight on the honeymoon? Or I know for me and my wife with baseball season, we got married before the season and then did the honeymoon after the season was over. So how'd it work for you guys?
Yeah, we kind of planned the wedding after baseball season, so we were able to do the honeymoon a couple days after the wedding, and it was a great time. Wedding couldn't have gone any better. We went to Hawaii for the honeymoon and could have stayed there for a couple months, so it was a lot of fun. Very nice. What was your favorite part of Hawaii while you were there? I mean, just hanging out on the beach. Everything there. I don't know if you've been there, but I had never been, and everything there is so stinking clear and colorful. And we went snorkeling, did a bunch of different things, but it was so much fun.
Nice. No, I have not. My parents did their honeymoon there, and then my sister did hers, but my wife and I opted. We went because we obviously live down here in Biloxi, so we've got a beach right here in Pensacola and Destin just down the road. So we did the opposite. We went to Iceland in November.
Oh, wow.
Which was fun and very different and a great experience, especially since we can't generally make it there during the summer. But congratulations to you, man. That is thrilling. And I hope you guys are enjoying the off season. But looking back on last season a little bit for you, you were obviously with us from opening day, but then you got a late push up to AAA. And for you, what was the biggest difference that you noticed at AAA, and how'd you think it went overall?
It went well. I really enjoyed it. As far as differences, I mean, I feel like the game is kind of, you get older, it doesn't change a whole lot. I think the biggest thing was just consistency and the different levels of players. Double A was a lot more prospects, I think. A lot of young guys with a lot of talent, and then you get to AAA, and I'm walking through the hotel lobby the first day, and I see like 8 kids running around because half the guys on the team are 33 years old with a couple kids, and it's not like in Biloxi when we had a bunch of 21, 22-year-olds. It's kind of I would say the biggest difference was just the age difference. I mean, you got Terang at shortstop at 21 years old, and then starting pitcher Josh Lindblom at 34. And so playing with grown men then.
And how much did that help you over the course of, the last couple of weeks of the season to be able to pick their brain a little bit about guys who, some of them have played at the big leagues and they're just at AAA if there's maybe an injury or something? How much did you get to pick their brains to learn about that next step to try and make it up to the big leagues?
Yeah, you try to talk to as many of them as you can, and all of them are great guys. I mean, they all kind of tell you the same thing. You're right there. It just, you got to have something go your way and be playing well at the right time. But you kind of watch how guys go about their business and try to just watch and see what a big leaguer's routine is like.
Yeah. So this season for you, especially here in Biloxi, folks who I talk to, they absolutely loved having you here. And the big thing you drew rave reviews for was that you hit the ball the other way, and you hit it the other way for power. And I don't know how much you look at, fan graphs and things like that, but for your season here in Biloxi, you hit the ball the other way at a higher percentage than you have at any other point in your career. It was like 34% of the time. Was that something going into the year that was a focus for you, or is that kind of an approach you've always had that you just had success with here at this level this year?
Yeah, I kind of think it's something that I've always done. It was something I was a lot better at in college. That was kind of whenever I was going well, I was hitting the ball the other way. And like you said, for a little bit of power. And then in 2019, I had a good season in Wisconsin, but I was pulling the ball all the time. And I was just kind of sticking with that. And then beginning of the year, started off really slow in Biloxi, and just got back to some old video of when things were going right. And kind of the trend was I need to get back to using the whole field, and was able to do that. And the year kind of turned around for me.
You mentioned the fact that you had a really good season when you were there in Wisconsin. You had 41 doubles, I think, in 2019, in your first full season of pro ball. And you actually ended up here with the Shuckers at the end of that season. And I wanted to ask you about that because I know it's going back what feels like a lifetime, but a couple of seasons, because you wrapped up the year. And if I'm not mistaken, you were in Arizona getting ready for the fall league. And then all of a sudden it's, hey, you're heading to Jackson, Tennessee to go play in a championship series. But take me through what those couple of days were like for you.
Yeah, I got to Arizona. I think it was that day. I was rooming with Robbie Hitt, was in the fall league, who was in Biloxi all year. And me and him were hanging out, and there were some other guys from the Brewers in Arizona who were rehabbing or whatever. So we were hanging out in the hotel lobby, and I had left my phone in the room. And so I'm hanging out downstairs with a bunch of the guys. And then one of them got a call and said, hey, Tom Flanagan just told me you need to go get your phone and call him. And I went up to the room and had like 5 missed calls from Tom Flanagan and like 4 from Charlie Green. And I was like, I'm about to get cut. Like, I'm missing calls from all the important people. But they were like, hey, can you make a flight at 6 a.m. tomorrow to Memphis? I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go. And got a flight to Memphis and a 2-hour Uber to Jackson to go play in the championship series. And it was a lot of fun. It was tough that we lost in the 5th game, but it was a cool experience.
Yeah, get that taste of double. And you never went back to high A. You just went straight from A ball to double A and just rolled right along. Bring it back to last season. Obviously there were a lot of ups and downs for the Shuckers last year, but if you had to think back on like 1 or 2 moments that really stuck out for you, what were kind of your favorite points or favorite moments that stand out from last season?
There were a lot of them. I mean, it was tough because we obviously didn't have the season that we wanted to as far as wins and losses, but the group of guys that we had, I absolutely loved, especially the bullpen guys. More at the end of the year, I started to catch a little more, so I spent some more time with them, and just loved being around those guys. The whole staff I really liked, and just some of the travel was really fun. I remember we were in the Braves, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. We were in Mississippi playing, and the owner of the hotel came out and was in the like front area hanging out with us with his Mississippi Braves jersey on, like talking crap because we beat him and we were like knocking him out of first place. And he was like bribing us with beers to like, hey, if y'all let us win, I'll get you a 12-pack or something. I was like, geez, that was pretty cool.
No, it's a good spot down there. And I mean, what was your favorite non-MGM Park, non-Biloxi city from last season? Because you were here to see all of them except Chattanooga, which we didn't play in last year.
Right. Man, the first one, Birmingham, that place was really nice. I liked playing there. I hated we didn't get to go back there. Trying to think, there were some good ones, some not so great ones. But off the top of my head, I would say Birmingham was probably one of my favorites. And then the new one, Rocket City.
Yeah,
that was a fun park to play at. That was. They drew a really good crowd.
Yeah, no, Birmingham is one, and I was really excited because in 2020 we were supposed to go there twice in the second half of the season, and that's a ballpark that's set up well. And if you guys got any, I'm sure with what the rain out that we had day one, and then we played a doubleheader and all that fun jazz that you guys probably didn't get. And it was, when there were still a lot of restrictions and stuff, but Birmingham as a city is also a really cool setup as well. There's a Topgolf right around the corner from the stadium in downtown. We used to stay about a mile away from there and check that out. Down here in Biloxi though, did you get a chance to try the seafood while you were down here? Did you do like raw oysters on the half shell at all? Or what was your favorite Biloxi food experience that you had?
So unfortunately, I never got to do half shell. Like the entire team recommended it, but it seemed like I could, whenever I had family in town, we could never get a reservation. But we, a bunch of the team, like our go-to for an off day was to go to Shaggy's. We had a group of like 6 to 8 of us. We'd make a couple tee times, play on a Monday, and then we'd all go to Shaggy's after and had some good seafood there.
Very nice. Shaggy's is a good spot. Who won most of the golf games? Who was the best golfer on the team last year?
We had a good group of us that were all pretty similar. I would say me and Matt Hardy went on a pretty good run. We won like 3 or 4 weeks in a row against Robbie and JT. I still remind them about that.
So and going back to those guys, because you mentioned the fact that you got to catch a little bit more and you saw an uptick in that. And really, you got to a point where you were throwing out a bunch of runners behind the plate. I think there was a stretch where you threw out like 7 straight guys who tried to steal. That included Justin Dean, who obviously was one of the best base stealers in the league last season. How comfortable did you get behind the plate when you saw an uptick of playing time there? Because it seemed like you really settled into a good groove behind the plate late in the season.
Yeah, I really did, and it's not my normal position that I grew up playing. So it's one of those that as I get more reps throughout the season, and it was the same thing in 2019 in Wisconsin, as I caught more, I got a lot more comfortable, whether it was receiving or just calling a game or whatnot. But as I played more games, it felt a lot more second nature and not as forced.
Yeah. And you already mentioned Charlie Green as well, who obviously handles the catchers throughout the Brewers organization. How much has he helped you learn behind the plate, or is there anybody else in the system that you can point to that's really been a help that has made you feel more comfortable behind the plate?
Yeah, it's been a lot of working with him, and he's been great. He hasn't tried to force me into becoming some stiff catcher. He's like, hey, that's not going to be you. You're always going to be kind of an infielder first guy. So he just always kind of tells me to use my athleticism and just be an athlete back there. And I've learned so much from him. My first manager, Nestor and Helena, was a catcher and learned a lot from him. And I've actually gotten to at every level but Biloxi. I've been with Jim Henderson. He was in Helena, then Wisconsin, and in Nashville. And he was pitching coach all those years and kind of learning how to call a game and picking his brain. A guy kind of pretty fresh out of playing has been really nice from that aspect.
Yeah. No, I was in Helena the year before you were there with Nestor, and now he's one of the bullpen catchers and a bullpen coach up in Milwaukee. So he obviously knows what he's doing. And you got to meet, was Nestor skinny whenever you were there? Because he went through his big transformation at some point going into 2019, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was my first year. So yeah, drafted 2018. I was in Helena and Nestor was a big man. And when we came back to spring training, I was like, who's the new skinny catcher? And they're like, no, that's Nestor. He looked completely different.
Yeah, no, Nestor is a great guy, and he was fantastic to get to work with. And he was here. He came up in 2019 with us for a minute before rookie ball started because we needed an extra body, and then he was set to be here as part of our 2020 staff. And fortunately for him, he went ahead and skipped on up to the big leagues and was there.
Mhm.
You mentioned the fact that you were drafted in 2018. Now, you came out of Northwestern State, which I know where Northwestern State is. But I don't think a lot of people do. How did you end up going to school there? Because obviously, I mean, you put up phenomenal numbers while you were there. You turned into a 7th-round pick. So what led you to end up at Northwestern State?
Coach Curry, who was their pitching coach at the time, is now the head coach at Arkansas Little Rock. He recruited me, and at the time I was a junior in high school. I was a very, very slow developer. I was tiny. I was a shortstop who was like 5'5", 5'6", like 140 pounds maybe. I was tiny, and I wasn't getting many looks. And so I had heard of Northwestern State because somebody that I knew growing up went and played there. So I was like, I mean, it's a Division I program. I was like, I'll kind of keep my eyes open on other schools, but nobody else really wanted me. So I was like, I'll go there, and it ended up being the best 4 years. I absolutely loved it. And luckily puberty hit, and I got to grow some and got a little stronger, and bat speed came a little bit and started becoming a little better player.
So when did you officially go through that growth spurt? Was that like your senior year, or was that you got on campus before you went through it?
Yeah. So I started growing a little more my freshman year of college.
Mm-hmm.
I came in at like 160. I think my sophomore year I was at 190. Not all great weight. I put on some bad college weight too, but I think it was my junior year I finally like stopped looking like I was 10 years old, and I looked like I should be playing college baseball.
You're probably like me. The moment you figured out you could grow a beard, you never go away from it ever again, right?
Yep. I told my wife, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to go full shave for the wedding. And she was like, I'm not going to marry you if you do that.
Has she ever seen you without facial hair before?
Yeah. So we went to college together.
Mm-hmm.
And so she saw me my first 2 years in college when I didn't have facial hair, when I did look like I was 10 years old.
Yeah. My wife, I had a goatee when we started dating, and then she encouraged me to grow the beard. So she's never seen me with just a straight, clean face, but she's the same way. I think she'd divorce me if I did.
Right.
So while you were in college, though, did you have Tommy John surgery? Did I read that right?
I did. Yeah. I guess it was after my junior year. I tore it before my junior season. We were down a few arms. We had some serious injuries, and I mean, I was like, oh, I pitched in college. Like, I kept begging my coach to like help try and like help out the staff a little bit. And he's like, no, no, no. And at this point, he was also trying to help me out by teaching me to catch a little bit because he thought that's where I would get drafted. And then finally, he was like, all right, I'll let you do it. We got to be careful. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it took me 2 inter squads to completely tear it on the mound, like 2 weeks before the season started. Mm-hmm. And I got lucky. My head coach, Bobby Barbier, he had done that same thing in college. And he was like, hey, I played a season with it torn. Just play. You're going to play first base and have a torn UCL this season, and then get surgery after the year and see what happens after.
Yeah. So, obviously, and I mentioned a little bit earlier, and one thing that always jumped off when I watched you play was how strong your arm was, because it played at third base, and then obviously it played behind home plate as well. The recovery to get back your arm strength to be at that point now, do you feel like it not that it helped you, but when did you ever feel like, okay, no, I'm back to full strength, that I'm ready to go and I can just let it rip without even thinking twice about it?
Yeah. I mean, it took me a while. I mean, it was probably not till 8-9 months after the surgery where I felt like I was full go. But before that, I had never experienced any arm pain pretty much in my life. Mm-hmm. And so it was definitely weird having to go through all the rehab and like actually being sore in my arm at times, because I used to just show up and I could throw it to the fence and not have any problems and not be hurting. But it took me a while, but I think all of the rehab and going through that made it a lot stronger, which I think has helped me. And now not playing 56 games anymore, you got to play 140 and hopefully eventually 162. It made it stronger to where it can last throughout a season, where it almost last year it seemed like it got stronger as the season went on.
Well, that's all you can hope for. And do you think that helps you relate a little bit more to the pitchers? Because, I mean, now it seems like, if you're a hurler and you haven't had Tommy John surgery, it's almost like, what are you doing at this point? Which is not a great indication for where the game's at. And you obviously want guys to stay healthy, but I know that so many guys have had it. So does that, just gives you one more thing to relate to pitchers with, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, they ask about how the surgery and rehab was, if they're going into it. And like you said, especially starters, it seems like if you haven't had it, you're going to have it at some point, because it's just one of those things. But yeah, it's definitely another talking point for a catcher to get to talk to a pitcher about.
Now, you mentioned the fact that obviously, like, you're looking to play 162 games. It's what every guy is looking to do, is get to the big leagues. And I'm not sure if you know this or not. If and hopefully when you get to the major leagues, right now, I think you would be the sixth player in Northwestern State history to ever play in the big leagues. And one of them, Lee Smith, actually didn't play baseball at Northwestern State. But I know that obviously you've got one of your teammates who's playing for the Diamondbacks now, and there are a couple of other guys that are vying for that position. But did you know that it's such a short list of guys from Northwestern State who played in the bigs?
Yeah, I knew one huge. We've had, we've had some big names, obviously, like you said, Lee Smith and some others who have done some good things in the big leagues. And then recently guys like Nick Heath have made it up. But yeah, there's not too many. The program seems to be going up, though. I think the last 5 years we've had at least one guy drafted in the top 10 rounds. I mean, they've had some really good arms the last handful of years, and so hopefully that number keeps growing.
When you guys kicked it off, won the first Southland tournament in program history. Whenever you guys were there, you had the go-ahead home run in the seventh inning, if I'm not mistaken, in that game as well. Mm-hmm. So it is a program that's off and running, and there are guys who, once they get another full season of pro ball, I think there are going to be several of you that are pushing up there to the big league level. But yeah, I always found that interesting, in that Lee Smith, obviously the Hall of Famer, he played basketball when he was there, but he didn't actually play baseball on campus, because he'd already signed his professional contract with the Chicago Cubs. So he wasn't eligible to play.
Right.
So obviously it's the off season. I mean, you got married, honeymoon, but I'm sure that kind of you're about to start moving back into the process of getting ready for next season. So what's kind of the off season plan for you moving forward for the next couple of months?
Yeah. Like I said before, kind of the call started, I just got off work. I'm working right now. Like kind of in the early mornings until early afternoon, just to try to make a little money, because we don't make a whole lot during the season, and getting married is not cheap. But then after I get off, and I'm doing that up until the end of the year. So for now, it's just start ramping up hitting right now, and then working out, lifting, running, all that. And then once New Year's hits, it's kind of full go. I'll be on the field. I got lucky. One of my college coaches from NSU is now at UTA, which is right down the road for me here in Texas. And I get to practice with their team and take ground balls, catch bullpens, hit BP, live at bats. And there's also a bunch of players in the area who get live at bats off of and catch bullpens. And so got plenty of resources, and it's kind of that time of year where you guys start ramping up and it's go time.
Yeah. Who is there? Anybody from the Brewers organization that's there that you're working out with, or anybody else in particular that you're like kind of have a set workout routine with, or is it just, hey, I'm in the area, let's get together, let's hit, I'll catch a bullpen, whatever?
Yeah, it's good. Usually just kind of find and see anybody who you can find and catch bullpens and hit. I mean, there's so many that it can change every week. There's actually Holby Milner, who was a reliever for the Brewers. I got to play with him in AAA, and found out this year that we played for the same summer organization in high school. And he goes up to that facility all the time. So get to hopefully play catch with him and catch some of his bullpens. And so that'll be a familiar face at least. And I think Tristan Lutz is in the area, who was in Biloxi, and he'll be up at the facility where we're doing live at bats and stuff.
Very nice. Well, UTA is, so I'm from Arlington. So UTA is, 5 minutes from my high school and 10 minutes down the road. So that's a great facility to be working out at. And I know that, like you said, Hobie Milner, he was actually at the University of Texas while I was there and had gone to high school with one of my roommates over there in Fort Worth. So it's amazing how Dallas, Fort Worth, we all find each other wherever you might bounce around and do.
Yep.
So, and last thing for me, I mean, obviously, the Brewers went by, they didn't add anybody to the 40-man roster. So you're Rule 5 eligible this season. So have you thought about the possibility of, whenever the Rule 5 draft happens, that like another team could potentially grab you and add you to their roster?
Yeah. I mean, I've had to do some research. There's so many things you don't even know about professional baseball when you get into it that you kind of learn each year as you go, but kind of looked up the rules on that. And so I don't know how much of a real possibility it is. I've looked at it a little bit. If it happens, great. If not, I try not to worry about too many of those things. There's so many things that can happen during a season where teams can trade guys, get rid of them, whatever. And so I just try to focus on what I can control, and whatever happens.
Well, that's good. Well, hey, good luck with the ramp up and enjoy a little bit more downtime. Enjoy the first stages of married life. I'm thrilled for you guys. And then good luck when spring training rolls around. And I'll say the same thing that I say to everybody. I hope we don't see you again here in Biloxi for all the right reasons. I fully expect you're going to be in Nashville to start the year. And hopefully we're seeing you in Milwaukee in a very short amount of time. But David, thanks so much for taking a little bit of time today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Well, a big thanks again to David Frye for joining us, giving us some great insight. Now we're going to shift on to the organizational all-stars for the Brewers this year. And joining us is the voice of the Carolina Mudcats down there in the Low A East. Greg Young is with us today. Greg, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, hey, you guys had a fantastic team in Carolina this season. I know there were a lot of guys who drew our eyeballs a ton this year, and the Brewers announced their organizational all-stars. You ended up with 6 out of the 11 org all-stars from the Mudcats. So it seemed like you guys had a real fun team this last year.
We did. And, it was really from the very beginning, and it continued all year long, even after pretty much all of those guys went up. We got a nice group of guys coming in straight out of the draft that looked really good too. But, just thinking back to how that season started and how long the team was in first place. I mean, I think that alone speaks volumes as to the level of talent that we had and how many of those, guys we had all throughout the starting 9 or whatever it might be in the starting rotation, all that kind of stuff. It was a really good team. And a lot of those guys, just put together career seasons. And for some of them, it was their very first, which was, fun to see.
Yep. And we'll backtrack and talk about some of the other guys, but I will start with this because the big name right out of the gate for the season was obviously Joe Gray Jr. And he was phenomenal for you guys right from the get and really dominated all the way until he was promoted to High A, Wisconsin. And he still played well there. And we talked with Sam Dykstra a little bit about how the end of his season went, but he just seemed like it was just a joy to get to watch him play. What did he do best, in your opinion, while he was there? Because he did a lot of things really well.
Yeah, he did. To me, it was the consistency. It was every at bat, you knew that something special was about to happen. I mean, honestly, that's what it felt like, especially right when he went up. The anticipation of just him stepping to the plate, got the ballpark really energized and into it. But, the consistency of what he did at the plate, what he did in the outfield, he's a fantastic fielder on top of being a fantastic hitter. And he's a great leader too. The guys really rally around him and his energy kind of carries them, I think, especially in practice and in the cage, and in BP and that, all of that. But just the consistency of him being out there every day. That was the biggest thing, talking to him. He had mentioned that, his first couple of seasons, it was tough. He had battled through some injuries early on. He wasn't able to play a lot. He had a bout with pneumonia, I think it was early on too,
Yeah.
and just didn't have an opportunity to be out there every day. And going through 2020 and not having baseball at all, and then trying to maneuver his way through that, but then getting into 2021 and getting out there and being healthy and not missing any playing time was the biggest factor for him. And finding that rhythm again, and finding that joy of being able to excel on the field pretty much with everything that he did, I think really drove him. And he was fantastic. I mean, the power is there, just the wheels. I mean, the guy could fly. I mean, he was leading all the baseball in triples before he went up, to Wisconsin when he was with us. I mean, it was whenever he made contact, I mean, it was just, stand back, watch, and just enjoy, because it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that was how, and obviously it's an easy analogy for the Brewers, but that was how Christian Yelich was, especially at the end of that 2018 MVP campaign.
Yeah.
It was anytime this guy steps to the plate, it's going to be special. And I think that's what was so exciting. And that was something that Sam Dykstra said that he talked to Joe Gray Jr. about out in Surprise, and even at his time before the whole Arizona Fall League got going, is he said, I'm just happy that I played the whole season. And he got even more than, a standard, minor league season with getting to play in the Arizona Fall League. So we'll hope to see him here at some point. All right, on to the organizational all-stars. Joe Gray Jr. was one of the 6, but I'll move from the outfield to behind the plate, and that's Xavier Warren. I played 53 games for you guys. He's one of those guys the Brewers drafted in the 3rd round, and then they said, well, the plan is for him to be a catcher, and that caught some people off guard. So, I think he played something like 17 games behind the plate. How did he look as a catcher in his first season there for Carolina?
Yeah, he was limited. He went through some injury stuff early on in the season, so we didn't get a chance to see him behind the plate, immediately, I guess, or at least not for an extended period of time at the very beginning of the year. But the times that he was back there, he looked great. I think he was still learning how to call games and really how to command the pitchers. Obviously at this level, and even probably high A for that matter too, you're still relying a lot on the pitching coach and manager to kind of give you an idea of what it is that you want to do as far as, pitches to throw. But I think at this level with manager Aralt in particular, I think he was kind of giving the guys some freedom to do that on their own, just to kind of test them. So I think Xavier probably has a little bit of work to do on that end, just in talking with Joe. But, as far as, ball blocking and that kind of thing, I think he had a good feel for it. Still maybe has some edges to round out that kind of thing. He got called for a catcher's balk. I don't know if I really want to get too deep into that, but that might help to explain, where he's at, just in little tiny mistakes. I'd never seen that before. I don't think he had ever seen that happen, obviously, before, but that did happen in a game. So there might be little things that he just has to iron out. But no, I mean, he looked good. It seemed like he had a pretty good arm. He's a fantastic fielder beyond that, just wherever you put him. We saw him a lot at third, saw him a little bit at second base as well. So, and at first. So, I mean, he's a fantastic athlete and has a great swing. I mean, first and foremost, that is the thing that stood out the most to me, is that, he can really hit it, and, you can put him pretty much anywhere. He's a really fantastic athlete and a good guy that potentially could be a good utility guy. But, I'd like to see him, spend some more time behind the plate just to see what he can do. But, again, as far as limited action for us, a lot of that was just injury related early on.
Yeah, and the Brewers have had a habit of doing this. I think of KJ Harrison, who they drafted out of Oregon State a couple of years ago, who was they had him as a catcher, then they kind of moved him to first base. David Frye, who was with us and obviously was on our interview earlier, he did the same kind of thing where he played first, he played third, he played a little bit left. Thomas Dillard obviously even did a little bit of the same thing where he's caught some, but they have him at first and they have him at a DH. Never a bad thing to have a lot of different options as a catcher. And we had a game that we won on a catcher's balk in 2019. I can't. Yeah, it wasn't a walk-off, but it was like the top of the 9th inning. And that was the deciding run of the game. And I'm just trying to remember how bizarro world it was, and something that, you hit a commercial break and you walk down the hall and you're like, okay, what just happened? What did we actually just see? I think it's one of those things where you have to see it to truly understand what a catcher's balk looks like.
I mean, it's simple. Honestly, all it was is he grabbed the ball after he got away from him with his mask. That's what it was.
That's right.
It was, I mean, and it wasn't like, anything super crazy. It was just something simple, just maybe forgot the mask was in his hand. I mean, that's all it was. But yeah, it was. I'd never seen it. It was a learning experience for me, certainly, to figure out what happened down there once, somebody told me from downstairs.
Yet again, another example of when you show up, you never know what it's going to be.
You never know.
And for those of us who have seen it for a long time, we don't know what it's going to be either. All right, on from catcher. The first base was Thomas Dillard, and I know you guys didn't see him this season. I don't think that you guys saw him back in 2019 either, because he had only played at Wisconsin back when they were low A. So there are a couple of guys that skipped over. So we'll go to second base and talk Felix Valerio. 85 games with you guys, 29 with Wisconsin. Initially in some of the write-ups, it was like he's an on-base machine. But he was only 20 years old. He won't turn 21 until the day after Christmas, or Boxing Day, if you observe it. What should Brewers fans be excited about for him at second base?
The hit tool. I mean, he can flat out rake. I mean, he's got, really good bat control, doesn't strike out much at all. I think he might have struck out 3 times in a game once, if that. I don't think it was him and Gabe Holt, I think, had not struck out more than twice all year until, we got to the point when Gabe went to you guys and then Felix went up to Wisconsin. But fantastic hitter. I mean, honestly, and a lot of power, more power than you would probably assume, considering, he's not the tallest of guys. He's more of the Jose Altuve type, where he, despite being a little bit shorter than most, really does, pack a lot of power, a lot of punch. He had 4 doubles in one game with us, I think, matched a franchise record. I mean, he can really, really hit. Really hits it well to the pull side, started more and more as the season went on, really hitting it to the gap to right center and going the other way. He hits the ball well up the middle too. Defensively, second base is his position. I don't know if he has the arm strength really to play shortstop. Maybe you can get away with having him at third, but at second base, I mean, he could definitely handle the spot just fine. Never had any issues, I think, in handling the throw from second to first and a double play turn or anything like that. But those throws from shortstop gave him some issues at times. But great hitter, really fantastic polished hitter, and it's going to be exciting to see that improve. And obviously, like you mentioned, he's still very young, so he still has a lot of strength that he's going to grow into at some point. And just to see how much more power he can tap into down the road is going to be cool to see.
Where did Felix and Gabe hit in relation to each other? Because Gabe kept it rolling when he got here to Biloxi. I think he had 1-2 strikeout game. And after his second strikeout, I think he broke his bat because he was so mad about it, because that just doesn't happen. So where were they in relation to each other in the batting order? Because if they were back to back, I can only imagine how much of a nightmare that would have been for a pitcher at that point.
Yeah, they didn't go back to back a ton. Mostly, Gabe Holt was our leadoff guy pretty much all year while he was here. That was just a lock in the lineup. And then usually it was Freddie Zamora that hit second. And then you would see either Felix or Joe Gray Jr. or maybe a Weimer. And usually that 3-4-5 spot was always going to be Valerio, Weimer, or Gray, and something in that order. So, and even Xavier Warren mixed in there a lot too. So that was one of the things that was interesting about last year's team, is that, I mean, those guys, they moved up and down the lineup a lot, and it made sense no matter where you put them. Felix could be your leadoff guy. That made sense. Joe Gray Jr. could be your leadoff guy. That would work too. Xavier Warren, possibly, so it was just a really fantastic hitting ball club, just across the board. Great contact guys. But normally, it would go Gabe Holt first, Valerio probably hitting in that third spot. But I mean, those guys, you're right. I mean, they didn't strike out at all. And it was just really, really impressive to see that, especially in this, the game, today. Strikeouts are such a big part of it now. And to see guys that have the ability to make contact, so consistently is really, really refreshing and fun to see.
What a tough life for Joe Aralt last year, especially during that probably like June and July. Is showing up every day and saying, all right, I have 6 guys that I could play literally anywhere 1 through 6, and I just get to pick where I get to put them today. Go ahead.
Just watch the offense go off. I mean, it was, one record after another all year long. It was really quite remarkable.
And you mentioned the power that Felix had. 79 RBIs across both levels. That was second in the Brewers org, only behind Joe Gray Jr. Led the organization in total hits, doubles, tied Joe Gray Jr. for extra base hits, second in walks, third in total bases behind Joe Gray Jr. and Joey Weimer. And he also finished second in the organization with steals. He had 31, and the only guy he couldn't catch was David Hamilton, who was 5th in minor league baseball in steals. So it also seemed like he had pretty good wheels as well.
He does, yeah. And that was another thing about that last year's team in particular, that it was a great blend of power and speed. But those guys had the green light too, because they were having so much success. It was just, why not? Steals were up across the board in our league in particular because of the various rule changes that occurred. The pickoff rule really, really affected things. Certainly on the bad end for the Mudcats, it allowed over 200 steals last year, which was just mind-blowing high. But that was part of it. Maybe in the steals being as up as high as they were. I'm not trying to downplay his speed because he can certainly run, but that's true. I think for across the board for a lot of the guys, Ernesto Martinez was the guy too that really benefited, I think, from the rule changes and being able to run some more. But Felix is the total package. I think just a matter of him developing a little more power, probably. But I can't imagine, there's going to be a whole lot more, but I'm sure there's still more to tap into. But the doubles should tell you exactly what to expect once he does begin to develop that grown man strength, if you will, as he gets a little bit older. You'll see a lot more of those balls go out.
And that was, I had meant to bring that up with Xavier Warren as well, because you look at some of his catching stats and the stolen bases to caught stealing is just a cavern or a canyon in between them. But I really do feel like a lot of that was from the rules in low A, and you saw stolen bases up. And the rule this year, if I'm not mistaken, was that you had 2 pickoff attempts to a base. Was it per batter? And that was it.
It changed every at bat. So on the third attempt, if you didn't catch the runner, then it would be called a balk, and then obviously they would advance. So what would end up happening is, and like I said, it would reset every at bat. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the speed guys, they would really test and force pitchers to throw over, and then on that third try, I mean, they're going. They got the green light. We even saw a team try and win a ball game that way, or tie the game actually in the 9th inning that way for the final out, and that they knew that. They got a runner at third. It was Abner Uribe was pitching. Xavier Warren, I think, actually was the catcher. And they kept testing it and kept forcing over a throw to third. And then eventually on the third try, broke for home trying to steal. And luckily Uribe, and with his arm strength, he throws over 100 pretty consistently, like it's nothing. He was able to get it home in time to get the out. So they won on a walk-off, caught steal for trying to steal a base. I think that was Fayetteville that tried that, but that was one of those things that kind of grew out of that rule that you can try and manipulate and try and take advantage of. But it was brutal seeing all those stolen bases. I'm going to be honest, there were a lot of steals, and I get what they were trying to do with it, but it might have gone a little bit too far. In all honesty, at some point it was exciting, but then it just became too much, I think.
Yeah, I that was kind of the impression that I got, because I obviously talked to plenty of other broadcasters in y'all's league. I have some of them that I've worked with, and obviously the broadcaster in Fayetteville worked with me in 2019. So I heard from him about the league and chatting with you. And it did seem like it turned into a little bit of a track meet. So it probably needs to be somewhere in the middle, because it does get rather aggravating when it's pick off to first, pick off to first, pick off to first, step off, pick off to first, pick off to first. And you say, okay, let's speed it up. But yeah, I can understand where that would turn into a little bit too much. I'll be curious to see what they end up doing with the rules, because at our level this last year, they banned shifting. The way that they did it is everyone had to have a foot on the dirt for the first half of the year. And then the second half, you have to have one guy or 2 guys on either side of second base. Which you saw plenty of lefties who, normally it's like, oh, that's right to a guy in shallow right field, turned into base hits. But I'll be curious how they distribute some of those rule changes again next year. But that's for next year to worry about, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. So from second base to third base, Ashton Mcgee, 71 games with you guys. Again, another guy who got a late move up to Wisconsin. If I'm remembering right, he had like a 2-week span where he was like the hottest hitter in baseball. And it was, didn't he have like a 9 RBI game this year?
He did, yeah, franchise record. That was in Kannapolis, who the Mudcats really feasted off of this year. I think most of the team records that were set were against Kannapolis, including McGee's 9 RBI game that you mentioned. He actually had a chance for the cycle in that same game, and in his final at bat, I think he needed a double to get the cycle, and he ended up hitting a grand slam in the final at bat. So that carried him to the 9 ribbies. One of, I think it was 10 grand slams that the team hit for the entire season, which is by far and away a franchise record. Yeah, it was unreal. I mean, it just across the board, the offensive numbers they put up were just really, really fantastic. But no, Ashton Mcgee, really, really impressive season. Really, just across the board. Plays a great third, plays a great first, just is anywhere on those corner spots. I know in college you played a lot in the outfield, so maybe there's an opportunity to get out there some too at some point. But just day in and day out, he put up numbers, and had a fantastic year. He was local to us too, so he actually was able to stay at his childhood home with his parents. He was able to stay at the same room that he grew up, going to high school and all that, and he got to stay in that same house, that same room again while he was playing in what was his first full season. He had never played outside of the complex league until last year, so that was a new experience for him, going out and traveling. And that was true for a lot of the guys, whether they be recent draft picks or even guys that are still in their first, maybe second, maybe third year in the organization, depending on how things broke out for them. But for him, he got a chance to stay home. His parents were able to come out to the games all the time and see him, so he really just, I think, thrived in that environment, being close to home. He went to North Carolina, so a lot of folks that he grew up playing with, maybe there or locally near Goldsboro where he grew up, they got a chance to see him play too. So this was just a perfect setting for him, and he just thrived in the comfort, I think, of being at home. But real good opposite field hitter. You were talking about shifts a moment ago. He was a guy that teams would usually, load up on one side against him. Mm-hmm. Didn't really seem to matter because he would just hit it the other way, and it showed good power the other way too. And just a real solid contact hitter. And like you said, he had that stretch where he was one of the hottest hitters, not just in our league, but in baseball. And, we actually had a run where it was Joe Gray Jr. was the one that got super red hot, like scorching hot, triples, home runs, whatever it might be, just couldn't get him out. And he had back-to-back Player of the Week awards. And then when he slowed down, Felix Valerio did the same thing. And then Ashton Mcgee did the same thing. And then Ernesto Martinez did the same thing. And then Joey Weimer just went nuclear right before he went up. So, I mean, it was like this run where you had the best hitter in the league consistently for over, it seemed like 2 months, just, one Mudcat after another. It was really, really fun. Probably the most exciting team, honestly, that I've ever been around. And it's, probably hyperbole a little bit, just to, trying to talk these guys up. And it was nice to have baseball back, obviously, coming out of not having anything in 2020. But man, I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, these guys really put on a show, and maybe part of that was us going to low A. I don't know, but whatever it was special and it was fun. And Ashton Mcgee was a big part of that. And for a long time, honestly, I thought he was going to be the MVP in this league. He had the numbers for it. I mean, he was slightly better than Felix Valerio. He was a little bit better than Joey Weimer in some areas too for a long time. And Joe Gray, he was right there with them. So there was a lot of really good players that came through this league, and Ashton Mcgee was right there with all of them for a long time.
No, I don't think that it's hyperbole. And granted, I have not kept up with the Mudcats for as long as you have, but it seemed like every single day we were checking in and saying, all right, what happened in Carolina last night, or what's happening in Carolina tonight, or who won Player of the Week yet again for the old Carolina League, RIP, now Low A East. Because it was this stretch where it's okay, here's this guy who's hot. Here's this guy who's hot. Oh, now this guy has stepped up. All right, I have to learn how to say this name because look at what he's done over the last 2 weeks. And I have to wonder if a part of that is obviously performing at that level. It's a testament to the coaching staff. But I also have to imagine part of that is also that positive peer pressure kind of inside of the clubhouse where, look, this guy's doing this. All right, now it's my turn to step up and do that. And when you're seeing guys have success, I think that breeds on itself. And that's part of what was so exciting for you guys this last season.
Yeah, and like I said, Joe Gray Jr. kind of set the tone early on, and the guys, I think, fed off of that. And again, if he wasn't lighting up the stat sheet, the box score, then it was Felix Valerio, and then it was Ashton Mcgee and Ernesto Martinez, whoever it was. Everybody seemed, like you said, like the feed off of that. Yeah, absolutely. Hitting is contagious. And I mean, those guys, they were sick with the way that they were hitting last year. I mean, it was really cool.
I know that's really exciting for Brewers fans to try and see an uptick in offense, because that's certainly what you're always looking for. From that, again, we're just making our way all the way around the diamond. Shortstop, Freddie Zamora, 70 games with you guys, 22 games up in Wisconsin. Obviously, the question for him was going to be his health after his ACL tear in 2020. How do you look, for his range and whatnot at shortstop? And then obviously talk about the hit tool, which was the big thing and part of why he was drafted out of Miami.
Yeah, he got out to a slow start, but once he got going, I mean, you could tell what they really liked in him. And the thing that I was most impressed with was one, leadership, really polished, really mature, kind of the quiet, stoic type, just going about his business the right way, day in and day out. As far as fielding goes, you wouldn't think that the range was as good as it was watching him, I guess, move on the diamond. It was more of a we had Dansby Swanson here in 2016 briefly.
Mhm. Yeah.
And to me, there were so many similarities with the way that Zamora carried himself in the infield and the way that he handled shortstop and the way that he had this just uncanny instinct to know where to go with the throw at any given time. And I thought the same thing about Dansby when he was here for those. I mean, it was only 3 weeks, but still you could see it. Like, I mean, you knew he was going to be special, right? Number 1 overall pick. But with Zamora, it was that same feeling, that same, kind of command, if you will, in the infield. He had those same attributes. And I mean, there were times he would make throws where, in my mind, I'm thinking this is a can of corn play over to first. Maybe there's like a runner at second, runner at third. It's going to allow a run, right? Wherever the ground ball was hit, he ended up getting it up the middle, deep in the hole, whatever it's going to be. This will probably score a run. He'll get the out at first, no biggie. That's the way you play it. Makes sense, right? No, he would find a way to find like the right angle on the throw to get it to home just in time to get the out to prevent that guy from scoring. And maybe they don't get the guy at first or whatever, but they get the out at the plate, which is more important anyway. But he just had this ability to kind of be able to know where to go at any given time. Relay throws, same thing. Maybe as opposed to the trying to get the guy at the plate, he goes to the guy trying to take third on the back end at a 2-out spot and is able to get that out instead. And then the inning is over and the guy trying to score ends up not getting the home in time. It was just little things like that. And those are big things, but he had a really just impressive ability to know what to do at any given time with his throws and was spot on, on target. He had a few that ran high on him towards the end of the season or end of the run with us, not end of the season, but just end of the run with us over to first. But he really, once he settled down again, I mean, he was on it. Really, really impressive fielder. May not be the guy that's going to blow you away like a Bryce Terang with like athletic ability and getting the balls up the middle and the spin throws and the jump throws and all those kinds of things. But just for the solid fundamentals and going above and beyond with like his instincts, he looks fantastic. I was really, really impressed with him.
Yeah, and that's a great spot that the Brewers are in now, where they've got Willy Adames at the top, and then you have Bryce sitting right there at 21 years old in AAA. And we saw him here this season, and I've said it plenty of times before. Early on, scouts thought, he's probably going to end up being an outfielder. Don't know if he's going to be able to play short. And after he got settled in this league, by the time that he got promoted to AAA, the consensus was, no, this guy's a shortstop and he's going to be in good shape. Obviously, you lose David Hamilton, and we'll talk a little bit more about that trade in just a second because of a guy who played down there for you guys, but then to have Freddie coming up as well. It's a great spot for the Brewers to be in. They have just a lot of guys up the middle to pick from, and it's exciting to hear that, look, they're sound defensively. They make really good plays. And then, as I said, for Freddie, I know he can hit a little bit as well.
Yeah, and he, his first home run was, I think, an opposite field liner to right. He had 2 actually in the same game. So had his first one as a pro and then got the second one right after that later on in that game. Really good line drive hitter. And as the season went on, you could see more and more of the power really develop. And like I said, it was a slow start. I think a lot of that probably had to do with, like you said, coming off of the injury, but then also it was his first year as a pro, right? So there was still kind of maybe a learning curve to get through there, but never seemed too overwhelmed. It was just kind of off balance was all, and once his body began to catch up more and more, and he'd gone through some injury stuff too early on that also slowed him down, that I don't think wasn't related to the ACL, but maybe as a result of body trying to compensate, maybe some other things popped up. I'm not sure, but once he got through that, I mean, you could see that, that hit tool is definitely there and will only get better the stronger he becomes and the more and more he's able to play. All
right. I am going to sit back and let you say whatever you want to about Joey Wiemer. The floor is yours because you saw it firsthand.
So, the first homestand, well, first of all, you watch him in batting practice and you just marvel at just everything that's just the guy is a tremendous athlete. I'm sorry. I'm trying to put it all together, and I've done this many times, but still every time it's like something new pops up. Tremendous athlete first and foremost. The energy is through the roof. It's contagious. I know I said that earlier, but I'll say it again because it is. And the guys really feed off of it, right? He's funny, charismatic, great dude all around. Batting practice was a sight to behold. And it was true for all those guys. I mean, the whole team hit for power. But Weimer, I mean, I'm telling you, man, like I have never seen someone hit a more no doubtable home run than Joey Weimer. I mean, when he gets it pure and when he gets it solid, the contact is there, the ball just takes off. But he did get out to a slow start with us. Once he got going, then obviously there was no stopping him. First home run that he hit was this moonshot to left that went over our video board on the fly, and it was unreal. And plenty of guys have done that, but it reminded me a lot of Jake Gatewood, the way that the ball came off the bat, just the angle of it, the ferociousness of the swing, just all of that. A lot of that reminded me of Jake Gatewood. But then you see him play just to say in the outfield, right? The guy has, I think I read recently, Pipeline had it listed, his arm listed as a plus. I think they graded it out maybe as a 70. If he doesn't have an 80 arm, then I don't know what is an 80 arm. I can't even imagine that, honestly. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he is just with his throws to the plate, throws to the relay man, whatever it might be. You don't run on him at all. I mean, he led this league in outfield assists, and he was in double digits. I think had 10 by the time we got halfway through the season, which is, I mean, no one was even close to that, and no one was even close to him when it was all said and done in outfield assists. But the power, the arm strength, off the charts. And then the guys, like I said, the motor just always on and just flies on the bases. And it's not even just the speed, it's just the always on it. Like there is no slowing down. There is no lower gear. It is always max effort all the time, and really, really fun to watch. I mean, he is, and like I said, he's a great guy on top of all of that, and just loves being out there. And the guys love him. I think him and Felix, I want to say Felix Valerio joked, or maybe it was Weimer joked, that that's their new best friends. Those two are, like stepbrothers now. It's like, the movie. It's those guys are they're tight. They're real tight, and it's fun. And Joe Gray Jr. is good friends with them too. I mean, the guys like that, they feed off of that stuff, and he was fun. But when he left, he had a run with us where he hit a walk-off home run on a Thursday night. I think it was the first pitch of the inning, and it was a no-doubter. Like, I mean, as soon as he hit it, you just knew, like, that's it. We think it hit the light tower, and we think it blew out a light like the natural. I didn't see it happen live, but when I went back and looked at the video, you could see, like, this little, like, pop and then, like, glass maybe. I don't think it was glass. I think it was dust. I think there was dust up there that fell down. I think that's what it was. But you could see, I mean, that was just the beginning of the weekend, too, because in the next day, he hit 2 home runs in the game, including a grand slam. And then on that Saturday night, he hit another walk-off home run, this one to left center, happened to be against the same pitcher that he hit against on Thursday night, all of this against Kannapolis. And he was so good against Kannapolis that he actually became a fan favorite in Kannapolis because of the stuff that he did there against them. It's weird. It was like this. He was so good against them that he became their favorite player, like the fans out there. It doesn't make any sense, but that's just like what he did. I mean, he was a legend last year. I mean, it was really, really fun. And for a guy in his first year, in affiliated ball, I mean, I don't think he could have asked for a better season. But I don't want to, go any further than that, just to say that, man, it's going to be fun, because if he turns into and can do anything like that with you guys or higher or whatever it might be, they might have found something really special with him. And I can't wait just for the season to start, just to see where he is, what he does in spring training, possibly, if there is a spring training or whatever. Yeah, it's going to be cool. A fantastic ball player and a lot of fun. Great energy.
Yeah, that's what it all seemed like. This is going to sound dumb because it's low A, and I get it. Did anyone ever consider or resort to intentionally walking him and just saying, here's 90 feet, it's not worth it?
I don't know. I don't think so.
But it's low A. So that's not
right.
That's not what it's all about.
Well, I mean, I have seen that, certainly. And I think that I don't think it happened only because there were so many guys in the lineup that could do what he was gonna do potentially, right? I mean, if it wasn't Weimer, then you had to get through Gray for most of the season. If it wasn't Gray or Weimer, then you got to get through Valerio. Then you got to mess with Zamora, who's all of a sudden, the best hitter in the league right before he goes to Wisconsin. Or it's Ashton Mcgee, who is off the charts amazing, this week or whatever it might be. I mean, that's how that team was, is that, that next man up was always going to be great. And then that's really how it went up until we had the promotions, and then things kind of reset. But, that's a whole nother podcast probably, with how this season, it was remarkable, just like how good they were. And then all of a sudden it was like, we went through the promotions and then everything changed. Then they caught up again, but it wasn't ever really the same. And that's how we ended up slipping out of the playoff spot. But it was a fun year. And really, once he went to Wisconsin, he even got better somehow. And I don't even know how it was remarkable.
That was the impressive thing, is that a lot of times guys will go up and it takes them a second to adjust. We saw that some here. Now David Hamilton was the opposite. He started off on fire, and then teams kind of started pitching around him a little bit. Corey Howell, though, took a second to adjust. He took about 10 days. And then after that, he was a really good hitter and kind of mimicked what he'd done at Wisconsin. But yeah, to make the jump up a level and get better, that's when you really start to feel like, all right, maybe this isn't a fluke. And it is going to be a question of, how does it roll over into next season and what does it look like? You mentioned the reset, you mentioned the end of the year. And part of that obviously was a lot of promotions where guys go up, and then you're getting draft picks that are coming. And so it's kind of, I think you talked about the chemistry that those guys had, and they would all been drafted together. They'd gone through spring training. They'd gone through off-season workouts, things like that. So when you're bringing in new draftees, they're just starting to build that rapport. I remember a couple of guys who, when they were here in 2018, they had been drafted in 2015 together, 3 really good outfielders. And they said, like, oh, we hated each other when we first got drafted. And then by the time they got to AA, they were inseparable, and they were a great 3-headed monster. But one bright spot for you guys, and I think the guy who picked it up last, was Alex Binelas. And he seemed to be that last guy who was like, don't pitch to him. He's phenomenal. And obviously he got traded away to the Red Sox. And I know that I was excited about it because you look at third base, he's a Wisconsin native. What did you see out of Binelas? And more than anything, what did Red Sox fans get in the trade that was just made?
Yeah, tremendous power. I mean, just off the charts. When we had that reset, it just, the wins and losses weren't coming. But the power numbers were still there, right? As far as who was going to be the guy to hit that just mammoth home run over the center field wall. And here comes Binelas, and made it look easy. I had only seen one player. Our ballpark's pretty big, right? 5 county stadiums. The walls here are over 30 feet tall or 25 feet tall, whatever it is. Really big stadium. Not exactly a pitcher's ballpark, but definitely not like a hitter's ballpark. It's somewhere in the middle, but tough to hit home runs, especially this straightaway center field. I've only seen one. I've been here since 2015. The only player I'd seen hit a home run over center field here was Monte Harrison in 2017. I mean, we all know how strong he is, right? Binelas did it, I think, twice in the time that he was here. I mean, he was only here for a month and a half, maybe something like that. It wasn't very long, and he made it look easy. I mean, Monte would hit like line drives, just would never come down kind of thing. He just scorched their way over the wall. Binelas, meanwhile, hits moon shots that just go on forever. Really special power, really, really special power. I don't know where he's going to end up, third or first, or what position maybe is best for him. I think that there was still maybe some concerns about the glove, but that's going to come, I think, with getting more and more experience and seeing balls hit hard at you over at third, that kind of thing, or at first, whatever it might be. But special power, class act, really good guy, very level-headed. Really, I think, enjoyed the fact that he was drafted by the Brewers and had a chance possibly to be home basically as a major leaguer potentially one day. And it was, you could tell that he was just excited about that opportunity. But the big leagues is the big leagues, and if he gets a chance to make it with the Red Sox, I'm sure he's going to be just fine with that too. But really special power, just really just off the charts.
Yeah. All right. So those are all of the names from the organizational all-star list and one who wasn't, but obviously was subject to the trade. Are there any other guys that we haven't talked about that, you think Brewers fans should be excited about, and maybe like a pitching prospect or two? Because it's all offensive, and granted, they only hand out one right-handed, one left-handed, and the lefty was Ethan Small because of the season that he had, and one reliever. So there's not as many opportunities. But is there anybody else that really stood out to you last year that maybe isn't getting, pipeline top 30 or
Sure.
postseason all-star that you think people should be excited about?
Well, I mean, he already gets the accolades, but Sal Frelick is really special. I mean, he is, we're talking about Gabe Holt and Felix Valerio and their ability to put the ball in play and their ability that hit tool. Frelick is, there and possibly, to another level. So, we didn't get to see him for very long, but when he was here, I mean, he just put up unbelievable numbers, hitting, over 400, 500 for, probably like a week and a half before he went up, that kind of thing. Really, really remarkable ball player. Just as far as pitchers are concerned, I mentioned Abner Uribe earlier. Joe Aralt, our skipper, obviously winningest manager in Mudcats history. He would always say that, Uribe has a golden arm, and he really does. I mean, he throws, triple digits, it seems like with ease. I mean, it's effortless. He maxed out, I think we saw on the board here at 103. I mean, it was just every single time he came out, he was up there in that 98, 99, like it was nothing kind of thing. And then triple digits, just consistently. He was working on some stuff, trying not to live and die just by the fastball, trying to develop some secondary pitches. So I think that's where his command issues were coming in. The little that he had, I think the numbers probably look worse than what he was actually doing. Just, the eyeball test, I guess. He wasn't missing by a ton, it seemed like, but the walk numbers were high. No doubt about that. The numbers don't lie about that. But, he was developing a slider. And in some games, he would go probably too heavy with the slider because I think he would really, really wanted it to feel right and get it going and would kind of come back to the fastball. And then he'd get himself into trouble because then he's pitching behind. Then he's got to come back with a fastball and then it becomes hittable because he's trying to, place it too over the middle, that kind of thing. So sorry.
That's all good.
Still in the office here. I think I'm the only one here. Somebody got it. But no, so, Uribe is definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And I think he's going to be special, once they kind of rein it in a little bit. I know he had some success, I think, in the fall league too. So it was good to see him get a chance to go out there and pitch. Brandon Kennard is a guy that probably isn't too high on people's radars, but I think that he will be eventually. He's a big advanced analytics guy. Really into understanding what works for him, how to develop those pitches to work better for him. Really fantastic curveball, big 12-6 movement kind of thing on it too. So I think that he's going to be a guy that is going to put up really good numbers, especially the further that he goes in the system, and will only get better, as he goes on. Evan Reifert was kind of in that same area, just that the stuff was just so good, and I think really settled in how to tap into his stuff, right? The nasty slider that he had, and obviously he was traded, but so he's no longer in the organization. But he was a guy that I think him and Kennard were in the same area where give them time, give them the ability to dig deep into the analytics on their stuff, the better they'll become. And Kennard is a guy I think to definitely keep an eye on. Pitching wasn't the strong suit for the Mudcats last year. The offense definitely carried them, obviously. But there were a couple of guys that really had some good runs and some special seasons with us. And Uribe and Kennard are the ones that probably leaped to mind, first and foremost to me, and Reifert before he went up to Wisconsin and eventually traded.
Yep. No, Kennard is a guy whose name I saw a lot. Glad that I have how to pronounce it. And God, what more could you ask for a pitcher than to have a big old K right at the front of your name? So I'm excited about that. And I can't wait to see Evan Reifert closing games for the Montgomery Biscuits against us. Because I as soon as I saw that happen, I was like, that's really cool. And it's good for him. But this is going to be one that I'm just going to sit up here and say, all right, here comes Reifert out of the bullpen for the Biscuits, trying to close it out in the ninth inning. Because Montgomery and the Tampa Bay Rays, you guys don't have a Rays affiliate in your system, so you don't know, but
well, no, we do. We don't play them.
Oh, they're in the other end.
Yet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forget
the other division. Yeah, Charleston. We didn't see them at all. It was weird. We didn't see a lot of teams last year, and we still won't this next season. But I'm excited to maybe one day get a chance maybe to see them in the playoffs. I was really looking forward to that. Their broadcaster, I think, is from Wisconsin too, so I know he's really big into the Brewers, and he and I would talk a lot too. So it was fun.
Yeah, but no, Kanar's a guy who seems to be really exciting, and we've talked about Uribe on the podcast before. Sam was raving about how, you know, in Talking Stick or where Salt River played, that's the one place that you actually got TrackMan data, or Statcast data, and he threw the hardest pitch that anybody threw at the field all season, and a lot of the consensus was that wasn't even his best stuff because it was at the end of a full season. So,
and it was a season where he was hurt too. You know, he left us, I think, before we got halfway through. I want to say All-Star break, but we didn't have an All-Star break. But I think it was before the mid-season point, I guess, and didn't end up finishing the year with us. So that, you know, pitching in the fall, it was an opportunity for him to get some reps again and against really good talent, obviously. But yeah, that arm strength is special. And if he can harness, you know, that command a little bit or develop those secondary pitches, he's going to be up quick, you know, the sooner he's able to begin to piece that together.
Well, I think that's all I have for you, Greg. I know we'll check in again at some point in the near future, but thanks so much for all of the insight. It's exciting times in the Brewers system, and I'm excited to see these guys when they roll through here in Biloxi, but thanks again for taking a little bit of time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Garrett. Really appreciate it.
Once again, a big thanks to both David Frye and Greg Young. David, a fantastic interview. Great to hear about all of his experiences. And after talking with Greg, so excited for what is in store for Biloxi. And that's just a whole crop of guys that they might not start 2022 here in Biloxi, but man, they are probably not too far behind to push up and be a part of this crew as we move forward. A lot of offensive firepower that is on its way, and we're thrilled about that. If you missed the first episode of the podcast, you can go back and listen to Sam Dykstra. Sam had all kinds of great insight about the Arizona Fall League, all kinds of prospects that were there for the Brewers, and we ended up meandering down the road and talking about a lot of other different teams' prospects, so we nerded out a little bit about it. So you can go back and listen to episode 1 if you want to find that. Sam Dykstra from MLB.com was our guest. But again, a big thanks to David Frye and Greg Young. If you like this podcast, be sure to leave us a review. Be sure to subscribe. You can find us on the Apple Podcast Center. You can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube on the Biloxi Shuckers official YouTube page. And if we're not somewhere that you normally get your podcasts, leave us a comment and let us know. You can always follow the Biloxi Shuckers at Biloxi Shuckers on Twitter and on Facebook. You can search for Biloxi Shuckers. I'm also on Twitter at Garrett_Green. Try and keep up with what's going on in the Brewers farm system and keep you informed. That's going to be our last podcast for 2021. But once the calendar turns into January, we're going to have a lot more content for you moving forward as we tell these guys' stories and bring you all kinds of information about the Biloxi Shuckers. But again, a big thanks to David Frye and Greg Young, and we will see you in 2022.